Okay, so we are done with Unit 2. Unit 2, there's no test over. There was just your project. Your project is due when I see you guys again on Tuesday, so make sure you bring that back. And I think most of you guys in here have checked most of it or you've already turned it in. So good on that so far. Moving on to Unit 3, and I titled this unit, it's called Practical Math, because we're going to do a bunch of random stuff that I think is relevant to real life, and nothing more than basic algebra or basic arithmetic, add, subtract, multiply, divide. All right, so it's not going to be that hard. Yeah, you can have this one right here. All right, so let me make sure my thing is working here. Uh, as always, if you are label this one 3.1 homework in your homework, you guys in class don't need to turn it into Schoology. You'll show me next week, and I'll mark it into the gradebook. You guys at home will upload it to Schoology, and if you're watching this video later, there's a direction. Start a new page in your journal, title it. You're going to answer each question in red. Got to show your work for credit. Okay, got to show your work for credit. Not going to be that hard. So this lesson is on aspect ratios, and there's a lot of aspect ratios in real life that we deal with, especially on television screens. How many of you guys have anybody have an old TV screen like this? A little Mickey TV screen, not widescreen, right? It looked more like a box, right? When on TV screens are measured by their width and their height. So the width is the long side and the height is the shorter side. And old TV screens had an aspect ratio of what's called 4:3. The aspect ratio is the width to the length. Now, most of you guys know that the TV screens are measured by the diagonal, right? Anybody have a big screen TV at home? What size? 52? 60? Somebody earlier said they had an 85-inch at home. I'm like, holy, I know. I didn't believe him. I'm sure that's possible. I mean, you can get them pretty cheap now, right? Yeah. So, well, if you don't get like in super ultra HD or something, I got a 4K. I know that's cheap. How big though? It probably didn't last. Is it still working? Yeah. So the aspect ratio, you'll see this a lot. Aspect ratios in general work all over the place. All right. And it's written from the width to the height. So the longer side is the width and the height is the taller side. We always write it with a colon, so 4:3 or 4:3. I wouldn't really write it as a fraction there. But just really quickly, how do you figure something like this out? This is a pretty basic. If a TV screen has an aspect ratio of 4:3, how many times more is its width than its height? How would I figure that out? If it's for every 4 inches wide, it's 3 inches tall. How do I figure out how much wider it is tall? Divide what? Yeah, that's it. It's literally divide 4:3, and I know that my width is 1.33 times as tall as it is, as wide as it is tall. These are some of the basic screens that you guys will see. The old school TVs are the Academy ratio, 4:3. There's that 1.33 to 1. Okay, so there's that ratio. The one that you guys use in the US for your wide screens right now is 16:9. It's not quite exactly 1.85 to 1, but that's actually what it's supposed to be. So we call it 16:9. These are the widescreen TVs you guys have at home. They're almost all 16:9s. Anybody has seen that before written on their TVs or their boxes when they bought them? It's 16:9. And you might see some of these other bigger versions of widescreen, especially if you go see an IMAX movie. IMAXs have these big wide screens, especially if anybody been to one in Austin, downtown at the museum. It's a huge wide screen, and they film those IMAX movies. And even when you watch them at home on your 16:9s, what happens on the top and bottom of your screen? Little black bars, right? Yeah. So why do you think that TV screens are getting bigger and bigger, wider and wider in general? Anybody at home? Why do you think it's getting wider and wider? Started out by 4 by 3, which here, now we get 16 by 9, and they're getting even wider and wider. Why do you think that? What is that trying to mimic? What? Big TVs? What? Movies? Okay. What they're literally trying to do is mimic real life. Look straight ahead and hold out your arms. Can you still see both sides out of your peripheral? Can you see both your hands out of your peripheral? Okay. Yeah, you can. I was like, you're literally looking in real life when you see things, you're watching in widescreen. You're seeing in widescreen. You don't see in a tunnel vision. And so in a minute, what we're going to do is we're going to try to figure out the dimensions of a TV, dimensions meaning the width and the height, by if I know what the diagonal is, if I know what the measurement of the TV is. If I know how big the TV is, Faith, is there maybe a formula? If I know this line right here, is there maybe a formula that I could use to figure out what the width and the height are? Let me think back to geometry. Pythagorean theorem, yeah. The Pythagorean theorem, a squared plus b squared equals c squared. C is always that hypotenuse, and since TVs are always measured that way, we can actually figure out what the length and the width are. Imagine if you are a contractor and you're building an in-home cabinet for a big TV, and you want to make sure that it fits standard 65-inch screens. You would need to be able to calculate how wide and how tall that is in order to make sure that you are able to fit that TV screen in there. Okay, so we're going to do one of these together. It's two of these together. It's not a very hard process. Mark number 1 on your paper. So mark number 1 on your paper. Have all these in the slides already, so I'm not even going to write anything on the board. Spent some time on this slide, on these slides. Find the dimensions, so the width and the height of an older 25-inch television whose screen has an aspect ratio of 4 by 3. Show your work. First thing you need to do, don't write the question down. You don't need to write the question down, but you need to do what JoJo did and draw the diagram. It's a lot better if you draw a diagram on your paper when you're working out these types of problems. Okay? So draw the diagram on your paper. Doesn't need to be fancy though. Now the first thing we ought to do, I know this is a 25-inch TV. The diagonal is 25 inches, but I don't know what the two sides are. I don't know what the sides are, but I do know that the width is, for every 4 inches the width is, the height is 3 inches. So I can set up some variables that look like this. I can make the width 4x, and I can make the height 3x. So I can make the width 4x, and I can make the height 3x. Since I'm not writing on here, get rid of that glare. Yeah. Does that make sense? Now, as we work through this, let's write down step by step how we're going to do this. You're going to see all the steps on the screen, and so you can just follow along. Use my formula. A squared plus b squared equals c squared. So that's the first thing we should write down, especially when you're going back and reviewing these notes. Please write the formula down, because then you're going to know where you got these numbers from and where you inputted them at if you're going back and studying. I know a lot of you don't go back and study, but just do it for my humor, all right? Substitute. When we make substitutions, there's a couple of things. We need to make sure we're substituting for the right variable. The only thing that matters here is which letter, A, B, or C. Which one has to be C? 25. The 25 has to be C. When I make these substitutions in, guys, look at what I did right here. Use parentheses. Okay, we use parentheses every time we make a substitution. There's a number of reasons for that. But when we use parentheses, we know that we need to remind ourselves that the square applies to both the 4 and the x. Okay, so make sure you have both these steps on your paper. You might need your cell phone calculator out right now, especially if you don't know some of these in your head. But first step, let's start simplifying. What's 4 squared? 16. And it'll be 16x squared. What's 3 squared? 9. So it'll be 9x plus 9x squared. And then what's 25 squared? 625. Most of you, I think, have iPhones that has a squared button. I think somebody earlier told me if you turn it sideways, it gives you more options, right? Okay, so turn your iPhone sideways. If you guys have an Android at home, I can also show you how to put a TI-84 calculator onto your Android. That's not available for the iPhone, but it is on Android because Android's better. So, all right, let me stop right there. Does anybody not know how we got to this point so far? Basic arithmetic so far, basic algebra. Next step. What am I going to do with the 16x squared and 9x squared? Add them together. We call that combining like terms, right? So what's 16x squared plus 9x squared? What? Not 16 times 9. 16 plus 9. 25. So I get 25x squared. And I leave 625 the same right now because I haven't done anything with that yet. Remember, as we're working through algebra problems, we do step by step. Okay, we keep it going down. Make sure you keep be consistent with that. This shouldn't be new to anybody. Next step. Divide both sides by 25. I got to get rid of the coefficient in front of the x. So I got to get rid of the number in front of that x. I like to do, when I do a process like that, I like to do it in a different color so you see the process compared to the original problem. And I also like to do this. What happens to the 25s here? They cancel out. They don't technically cancel out. They actually just equal what? Yeah, 1. Yeah. So you'll need to divide 625 by 25. And it's 25. We're back to 25. So x squared equals 25. What's the last step? How do I get rid of the squared? Square, not square both sides, square root both sides. Square root both sides. I just drew it in there because I couldn't figure out how to put the little symbol on the Google Slides. So square root 25. And you don't need a calculator for this. What's the square root of 25? 5. Okay. So x equals 5. Does that mean we're done? Do we circle box in x? The question asks for the dimensions, so the width and the height. X equals 5, but the width is 4x, and the height is 3x. So I have to make one last little calculation. In order to figure out the width, I need to multiply 5 by 4. And in order to figure out the height, I need to multiply 5 by 3. I just got to plug in that whatever that x was to go back and make sure I answer the questions. So figure out what the width and the height are now. So that should give us our final answer, which the width is 20 inches and the height is 15 inches. This one was a little easy because they were all even whole numbers. Let's do one that's not so easy, okay? Not hard, right? That wasn't hard at all. All right, try this one. I want you guys to stay a step ahead of me. Try to stay one step ahead of me. So I know you guys are on your phones. Let's try to stay one step ahead of me on this one. Find the dimensions of a 65-inch Ultra HD. There's a big new fancy TV whose aspect ratio is in the Ultra Panavision mode, which is 2.75 to 1. This is still in your homework. Yeah, number 2. This is all your homework. I'm doing these with you because you're here. People at home are going to have to do it. The people that don't come to class are going to have to do it on their own. Watch the video. This time it says round all numbers to the nearest hundredth. So what I mean by that is round your final numbers to the nearest hundredth. Okay, that's 2 decimal places. And I'm going to show you what that means here in just a second. You don't need to write the question. Just draw the diagram and start working out your problem. When I label this, what's the width going to be labeled? Not the width. The width will be 2.75x. What will the height be? 1x. It says 2.75 to 1 is the ratio. Okay. Do I need to write the 1 in front of the x? No, you don't need to. But I think a best practice, especially for those of us that are so with our algebra skills, it's always good. It's okay to keep that in there. It's not going to be wrong. And it'll help us make less mistakes later on down the road. So do your formula and try to stay one step ahead of me. See if you can do the next step on your own. It's the same exact process with different numbers. And same exact process with different numbers. See if you can stay one step ahead of me. See if you got this on your next step. So I substituted in 2.75x squared. Make sure to use parentheses. Plus 1x squared equals 65 squared. Good so far? All right. Square those numbers in your calculator. If you don't have a squared button on your calculator, you can always just put 2.75 times 2.75. So 2.75 squared has got 4 numbers after the decimal place. Go ahead and write all 4 of those. We'll round it off at the very end. What's 2.75 squared? 7.5625. And 1 squared is 1. And then 65 squared is 4,225. Another rule of thumb, a good practice, guys. Notice what I did not put on that 4,225. What did I not put there? A comma. I don't like to write commas on those numbers because what ends up happening, especially with some of your crappy handwritings, you confuse them with a decimal and you end up making a mistake. So especially if it's I won't ever give you really super huge numbers. Don't write the commas. It's not a good practice to do that. You don't need it there to know that it's that number. Okay. Let's combine like terms. What's 7.5625 plus 1? Oh, come on, guys. 8.5625. 8.5625. 8.5625 x squared. So notice how each of these steps has been exactly the same. We're just putting in different numbers. Okay. What's our next step? Add, subtract, multiply, or divide. Divide by 8.5625. So divide both sides, see if you can get the right number. This time you probably will have to round, okay, because the number is going to go on forever. It's going to be irrational. This number wasn't irrational, so it's okay to write all the decimal places. Go ahead and round it to 2 decimal places now, the nearest hundredth on this next step. I know that those are going to cancel out there. Yeah, so 2 decimal places. What'd you get, Faith? 493.43. Good. That's exactly what I got. Good rounding. So x squared equals 493.43. Christian, what's our last step? Almost last step. Square root it. So you guys should have the square root button on your calculator. If you turn it sideways, I believe. Square root that number. I think it's the one that has the actual 2 in the square root, right? On the iPhone? Okay. Yeah. 22.21. That's exactly what I got. Good. So make sure to finish answering the question. Make sure you finish answering the question. X equals 22.21. But the question wants us to find the width and the height. This is actually already one of those two things. Which one is it? It's the 1x. It's the height, right? We just need to multiply by 2.75 to get the width. And I wrote those in there just so that you can see that process. But again, plug those in so you can get your final answer. Plug those in to get your final answer. So my final answer with the correct, let's see if you rounded correctly. What's the correct rounding for that width? It says to the nearest hundredth. So you're close. That's the nearest tenth. 61 point what? 09. Yeah. 09, because what's the number after? It's 61.08 what? 86? So that's going to round up. Yeah, that's going to round up. 61.09, and the height was 22.21. Scale of 1 to 10, how hard is this? 10 being hardest. It's a 5? Basic, yeah. Okay. All right. So there's one version of aspect ratio I was going to show you guys. Real life, practical stuff. There are 2 more practice questions for homework on there. You can leave some space in your thing, or you can just do it out of order. It doesn't really matter. Leave some space if you want to remind you to go back and do those homework problems. We'll have time here at the end of class in a minute because the rest of this is not going to take that long. Okay. So I actually just had some like little tidbits in here. Do you know that when you put in like an old movie on a new TV, you have those black bars. You know what those black bars are called? It's called letterboxing. Okay, on your TVs, and you've seen it before. Look at how the widescreen gets cut off in a full screen video or a different type of TV. You've probably all done that. Can you imagine watching a new TV that's shot in like panoramic and it's on an old TV and you get half the movie cut off? Like that kind of sucks. By the way, anybody watching Mandalorian today when it comes out? New season comes out. Nobody watches that? They don't watch Mandalorian? Disney Plus? Come on. And then it's like you've seen this before. How do you fix letterboxing? Well, you can stretch it and you can make the image distort. You all seen that feature on your TV? You know that it doesn't actually just stretch the whole image. It stretches the outside part more than it does the inside part to make it try to look at it as normal as possible. But you can also zoom in. But if you zoom in, what do you end up doing? You're losing parts of the movie or the show. So here's my favorite part. So here's another part of aspect ratios. How are you guys doing at home so far? Let me stop for a second. You guys, was that pretty easy? Let me hear from somebody. Yeah. Okay, good. I never get to hear y'all's voices, except for the same people that always talk. This is what and it sucks for you guys at home because we're going to do this hands-on next week, talking about changing tires. How many of you have ever gotten larger tires for your car or truck? What did you have originally, and what did you change to? So you went from 18-inch wheels to 20-inch wheels. Okay, Christian? Oh, so you just got the same size tires. Okay. When you got your tires changed, did you also recalibrate your speedometer and your odometer? Okay. So do you know if they'd recalibrated it for you, or you just hope they did?
Because you know when like some streets have the thing that reads your speed limit,
Uh-huh.
it's accurate.
It is accurate? Okay, so they probably did. So, did you know, if for those of you that don't know, that when you change your tires to a different size, that your speedometer and odometer have to be calibrated, otherwise it's going to read the wrong speed because your car and your truck is calibrated based on one full rotation of your tire. And if you go from a one tire size to a bigger tire size, one full rotation is going to go a lot farther, right? So that's what it's basing that speed on. And for those of you that don't know, speedometer, speed, odometer is how far you go, distance. Um, and so this is really important because people will be like, yeah, I'm going to go get some 22s on my truck. And the what? Is it? Really? Yeah. That's you have 22s? And what did you have originally? 18s? And so you didn't get it recalibrated? Well, some places offer it automatically. Some places you might just pay somebody super cheap to do it, but they're not going to do that because they don't have the equipment for it. It's all in the coding of the computer of your car, right? So I like doing this lesson because it ties in with the math, but it also is good to know some of these basic things. Okay, first of all, take a look at this diagram here. Everybody should know about parts of the tire, especially when you own a car or a truck and you need to know, even if you just get a flat tire, you need to go buy a new tire, right? Obviously, they can help you out, but also at the same time, you should know some of these things about your tires and about your car so that when you do become in a pickle, you're not just calling mommy and daddy to come bail you out, right? You're all about to be grown-ups in the real world. Some things about a tire, and those guys back there probably already know a few of these things. First of all, when we talk about the tire height, we're not talking about the height of the entire tire. Okay, we're talking about just this part right here. The tire height is the distance from the rim to the edge of the tire. So it's just that part of the tire. That's called the tire height. The rim, so when he's talking about 22s, when he's talking about 20s, that's this part right here. That's how many inches the rim is. That's what that is. The rim size, the rim diameter is that. And then the width of the tire is what you would expect the width of the tire to be. Just the side of the tire, how wide it is. Now, this codes are on every tire. Okay, these codes are on every single tire, and they mean a lot. Each part means a little bit different thing. The first is the type of tire. All of you guys will have P's on your car or truck because you're all passenger tires. The only ones that will be different is if you had like a tractor, a bus, something like that. An 18-wheeler will have obviously a different code at the front. This right here, this first three-digit number is how wide the tire is in millimeters. It's a different measurement than the rest of the tire. Don't ask me why. I don't know why they do that. Make it difficult. But it's how wide the tire is in millimeters. This right here is an aspect ratio. We just learned about aspect ratios. It's a percentage of how wide the tire is to how tall it is in the tire height. And we're going to use that to calculate how the circumference of the tire in just a minute. The diameter of the rim is this number right here. It's in inches. So that's your rim diameter. So the 22s that you have will end, it'll say 22 at the end. You're going to say 20, right? You already knew your codes, right? And these other ones we won't use in calculations, but they're important to know too. Your load rating. How much can you tow? How much can you carry? The higher the rating, the more you can tow, the more you can carry if you have a trailer or a boat or whatever it is. And then your speed rating. What are your speeds? You know yours? No. Speed rating. Do y'all know what speed? Anybody know what speed rating is? Yeah, this is how fast your tires can go without bearing the load of like a lot of vibration in your drive. There's other things that factor into that, but the higher the letter, the faster your tire rating can go. So I'm going to show you a pretty simple process. You're not going to write anything down right now. Okay, we're going to do one in a second. I'm going to show you how to calculate the circumference of a tire because the circumference is going to be used to show how far the car is traveling every single time your tire rotates. Okay. And here's the 4 steps. So just watch this. Okay, Claudia, just watch this for a few minutes so you know how to do this. We're almost done. And I'm going to let you guys work or do whatever. Here's the tire code. Okay, 185. There's our width of the tire. 75 is my percentage of my height to my width, and this is a 14-inch rim. It's a small tire, a really small tire. So our first step in order to figure out the circumference of the tire is to convert the tire's width from millimeters to inches. Okay. Again, I don't know why they did that. Who knows? Why not just make that code in inches already? But they didn't do that. So there are 25.4 millimeters in an inch. So you're just going to divide 185 divided by 24. I've already done it for you. So this is 7.28 inches. That's the width of the tire. So the width of the tire is 7.28 inches. Okay, you all right, Ethan? It's been a long week, right? 7.28 inches is the width of my tire. All I did here is I took the width in millimeters and I divided it by 25.4 to convert it to inches. That's it. Okay, that's the first step. Easy? Right. Second step. I want to find this height. Okay, I want to find this height, which is the height of the tire. That little arrow shows the height of the tire. It tells you all I got to do is multiply the width by the ratio, the aspect ratio, but written as a decimal. What is 75% written as a decimal? But as a decimal, 0.75. So I'm just going to take my 7.28 inches and I'm going to multiply by 0.75. What that gives me is 5.46 inches. So that means that the height of the tire is at 5.46 inches. That's what that is. Okay, so now I know the height of the tire, which is 5.46 inches. Okay, that distance between the rim and the edge of the tire. Step 3, I want to find the diameter of the entire tire. Okay, the tire diameter. What? What do you say? In order to find the diameter of the tire, I know what this is now, but how many tire heights, if I go across the diameter, I notice that there's 2 of those, right? The tire height is going to show up twice, right, Faith? So I'm going to multiply that by 2 and then add in this missing gap right here. Well, we know what that gap is. What is that gap? That's 14. That's the rim of the tire. So I take that tire height, I multiply it by 2, and I add in that gap, which is that 14 inches. Now I know that the tire diameter is 24.93 inches. Last step, easy step. Okay. No, just watch this one. We're going to do one together after this. Just watch this one. Last step. If I know the diameter, who remembers from geometry how to find the circumference all the way around the tire? I just multiply it by one number. What number is that? Pi. Yeah, special number with circles, right? Circles we always do with pi. So if I want to multiply, if I want to find the circumference, which is how much ground your tire will cover every time it rotates, I take the circumference, I take the tire diameter, which is 24.93, and I multiply it by pi. Guys, when you do this, please use the pi button on your calculator. I believe all the iPhones have a pi button, but if you don't have a pi button, you can use what instead? 3.14. I heard one of y'all say it a second ago. 3.14. Don't use 3.14 unless you don't absolutely do not have a pi button. But if you turn your iPhone sideways, it should be there, right? Okay. Now I know. Oops. Now I know the circumference of the tire is 78.30 inches. Okay, that's important in a little bit because every time your tire rotates, it's 78.30 inches. Every single time it covers that much ground. And if we know the circumference of the tire that we're changing to, then we will definitely know how much, how we can calculate how fast we're actually going, how far we're actually going. I think I just screwed up with the, I didn't mean to keep that there. Whoops. All right, now here's our practice one. All right, here's the code. Write number 5 and write the code there on your paper. Okay, number 5, write the code on your paper. Let's practice this. Almost done. I'm gonna let you guys go. P245/70R16. Can you see it? Okay. Step 1, we're going to convert the width into inches. So we divide it by 25.4. So your first step, divide the 245 by 25.4, and you get 9.65 inches. That's the width of the tire. I meant to send this PowerPoint to you guys so you could have it on your phone, but I'll send it to you in a second when you're working. Let's see how good your short-term memory is. In step 2, I took 9.65 with the ratio to find the height. What am I going to do next? Divide by 0.70? Multiply by 0.70. Yeah. Multiply 9.65 times 0.70. Okay, that's all. When you find a percentage ratio, always multiply with the percentages, with the decimal. So step 2 is 9.65 times 0.70. Now I have the height of the tire. Step 3. Remember, the height is just that part. Yeah. Actually, draw this real quick. Remember, on my tire, that height, what I just found is this part right here. Okay, it's just that little part. So how do I find the diameter of the whole tire? I take the height and multiply by 2, and then I add in what? The 16. So do that. Take the 6.76 inches, multiply it by 2 to get the part across, and then add in the 16-inch rim. Let's see what you get in your calculator and then we'll see if you get it right. By 2, because you got the tire height on both sides of the tire. Let's see if you got this right. Make sure to add in the 16. If you're doing this on your cell phone calculator, do it like this. 6.76 times 2, hit enter, and then press the plus 16. Otherwise, you may end up with a PEMDAS error in the way you do it. I got 29.52 inches. Good. Oh, so the reason why mine is different is because when I calculated this using the graphing calculator, I didn't just use the 9.65. I used the 9.65, but whatever the whole number. And that's the only reason why mine might be a little different than yours. If you're obviously right, if you got that close to it. All right. That's a good point, though. Last step to find the diameter or the circumference, multiply this by pi. So use the pi button. And obviously, if you use 3.14 instead of pi, your number also might be off by a little bit in terms of it would only be off ever so slightly, though, by a couple hundredths or maybe even like 1 or 2 tenths of a point. But other than that, it should be really, really close. So if you use the pi button, you should have gotten 92.74 inches tire circumference. Okay, again, it's just because I used the whole number. Yeah, remember I said you're going to be off by a couple hundredths. That's okay. You're close, obviously close enough. It's just going to be dependent on that rounding. Okay, on that rounding there. Okay, so before I end this video here, you have a couple practices in this slides. In a minute, I can send it to you guys as phones if you want, so you can open it up without having to go into Schoology. And then you guys at home can keep working on this. On Tuesday, when I see you guys again, we're going to go over the answers. So if you want to wait to submit it until after we go over answers, you can do that. And then the second half of class, we're going to go down to the auto shop, and Mr. Warren and Mr. Yargo are going to show us what the tires look like on a car, show the differences in between the different size tires and whatnot. Maybe even show you how to change a tire if you don't know how to do that. Okay. Valuable life skills here, guys. Valuable life skills. All right, I'm going to stop this video here.